Welcome to the Houndsman XP Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Powell. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be featuring some other organizations, some other folks that are probably not recognized as houndsmen. They've got a lot of experience with hounds, but they specialize in other areas of hunting. They represent different groups. And so my goal with all of these podcasts has always been for us to get our message out there to other crowds and other groups. So when we feature, like this guest this week, is the host of a very popular hunting podcast called Backcountry Hunting. It's not BHA, so don't get it confused. It's Backcountry Hunting Podcast. And Joseph came on the podcast. We're going to talk about a recent bear camp they had with several other folks and houndsmen, things like that. But the whole idea is for us to bridge gaps, and we can't do that. We can't make our reach broader. We can't have influence into other aspects of hunting if all we do is fight with them on Facebook. So we're going to take the next few weeks. We're going to talk to even some deer hunting podcasters and start having this conversation. We can't overcome barriers and hurdles if we can't at least sit down and have a conversation. So I'm really excited to have Joseph von Benedikt on the podcast. He's an outdoor writer, and he writes for several big publications that are hunting magazines. And what a great guy. What a great guy to have on our side and at least start developing that relationship. Old stories are great. Our history, we shouldn't forget it as houndsmen. I'm not asking anybody not to keep pushing those stories, and we're going to keep interviewing some of these legendary houndsmen and things like that. But as the one and only Benjamin Franklin stated, if we don't hang together, surely we will all hang separately. We can't survive into the future. We can't keep doing the things we love to do without our friends who are fishermen, bird hunters, deer hunters, elk hunters, sheep hunters, all of them. If you're a hunter, just say you're a hunter. And we need to bring the community together. It's a great conversation, gives you some insights and different things of how the backcountry hunters operate and what they think about us as houndsmen. On Friday's show, at the end of the pre-roll, I actually offered a giveaway for people that listen to the pre-roll. And there was a reason I wanted to do that. I need for folks to start tuning into the pre-rolls. And we're ending that giveaway. It's been up for 72 hours and it's had several thousand downloads. And if you haven't listened to it and contacted me by now, then you probably aren't listening to the pre-rolls. Several people did contact me after listening to that pre-roll, and they're all getting decals from Houndsman XP that I'm shipping out today. So listen to the pre-rolls. That's what I'm trying to say. And the reason is because this coming weekend, August 11th and 12th in Florence, Colorado, the Colorado Trappers and Predator Hunters Association is hosting an Outdoorsman Days. This is going to be an awesome event. There are going to be several sporting groups on the grounds, and it's all about awareness. You can find the flyers on their website for their events, and that's the Colorado Trappers and Predator Hunters Association. Just Google them. The event will come up. But, man, you got to make time to get out there because this is going to be a kickoff event for the upcoming battle for lion hunting and predator trapping in Colorado. There's going to be a ballot initiative next year in 2024. Everybody's expecting it. All the groups are gearing up for it. You got to get out there and show your support and be counted. Be counted. I know that there's a ton of things that you can find to do this weekend, but there isn't a more important place that you need to be. Blood Origins is going to be doing a premiere of the film Lionheart, which features my buddies Josh and Jason Whitaker from Whitaker Brothers Hunting. I know that the Dwyers, Cleve and Becky, are also featured in this film. It'd be a great opportunity to come out and show our support for Houndsman. Houndsman XP is going to be there. Shorty and I will be there. So I'm telling you, it's time to get serious about taking a stand for our rights. And just look at what's happening in Colorado and just plan that that's going to eventually happen to you in your state. Like I said on the AMA Friday, the pre-rolls are going to switch over to promotion of legislative issues, stuff like that. And this is where I can get this information out to you very quickly. So watch our Facebook groups and our Instagram pages. We're going to be posting, we post stuff there all the time too. You can check out Houndsman XP at houndsmanxp.com. And there's a link in there where you can download the podcasts and visit our Patreon. And we will be announcing very soon another benefit for our Patreon sponsors. You're not going to want to miss it. You can join us by going to houndsmanxp.com and checking us out on Patreon. Let's get right down to it. Thanks for tuning in to the Houndsman XP Podcast, taking time out of your day, whatever you're doing. If you're running the road, if you're running equipment, if you're at work, thanks for listening, folks. It's time to get the tailgate down. It's time to dump the box. Joseph, I know that you've done a lot of podcasts. So, folks, we've got Joseph von Benedikt in the house for this episode of the Houndsman XP Podcast. And, Joseph, you guys have got a successful podcast, the Backcountry Hunting Podcast. And we're going to talk about all that stuff. But I think the main thing here and the reason that I'm so happy that you agreed to come on and do this is because you're not, I don't think you would consider yourself a houndsman, but you are a very diverse and well-known name in backcountry hunting and the outdoor riding world and just a lot of stuff for us to talk about. And I always think it's good for us to get out of our silos and stop preaching to the crowd and show people some other places where they can get some resources to improve their hunting, improve their time outside, and to be able to talk about why they hunt, why we do what we do. And that's what we're big on, is about controlling the narrative, taking back the narrative for houndsmen. And I think you guys have got that squared away. So welcome, Joseph.
Well, thank you, sir. It's an honor to be here. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. You know, there's that old saying, preaching to the choir. Sometimes you got to get out in the streets and teach everybody else how to sing too.
Yeah, that's for sure. A lot of times I'll use the phrase, I'm just one beggar trying to show another beggar where to find bread,
I like that.
There isn't anything special. I've just kind of been one of those guys that has always been a student and always tried to learn. And that's actually came from a preacher that we had at our church for a long time. He used that line a few times, and I thought, that takes it all out of it. You get the ego out of it. It's like, I'm here to learn too. So
yeah, I grew up. I was, how shall I put it? Many of my formative years were heavily influenced by the Western author Louis L'Amour.
Oh, I've read a bunch of Louis L'Amour books.
Yeah. Anyway, he's got some great morals and just life processes that he teaches or taught. He's passed away long since, but one thing he wrote once that I've never forgotten is that a man in love with learning is never without a bride. I've kind of tried to live my life by that.
A man in love with learning is never without a bride.
Yes.
I'm going to have to write that one down. Maybe you can text it to me so I don't have to distract myself. Yeah, I like that saying. And our Wednesday show that Heath Hyatt produces is all about that. And he brings in learning from every place. He's a professional canine handler and has interacted with some of the top trainers in the world. And he brings all of that information that he's learned from that world and transfers it over for houndsmen. And his closing line on every podcast is, thanks for helping us teach, train, and learn.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about you, Joseph. Where you come from. Do you go by Joe or Joseph if somebody walks up to you?
I'll answer to just about anything, but my family and close friends have always called me Joseph just because my best pal growing up was Joe. so we had to be able to tell us apart.
I get it, man. It's with a last name like Von Benedikt, I kind of had a feeling it might be Joseph.
Well, sometimes you have to, let the sound ring.
That's right. It flows well. So where you want to start? You want to talk? Let's talk about your podcast. You guys are really hitting it hard and do a great job over there on a wide variety of topics. It's called the Backcountry Hunting Podcast.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. Our goal is to educate, entertain, and inform fellow hunters. And we do have a focus on backcountry hunting and even around the world, but of course, primarily here in the Rocky Mountain West, because that's where I'm located, where I grew up, and most of my hunting has been done. I spent a lot of time in Alaska and some deep, remote areas of the Dark Continent, Africa. And I count that, if you've got to travel 2 days and then, via airplane and then maybe a half a day by vehicle on dirt roads to get where you're hunting, that's pretty deep backcountry. So
right.
Lots of good stories. We're heavy on gear. We try and do a lot of how-to, such as choosing the right gear for a backcountry hunt and then how to set it up properly and how to practice and train for success. We do some mental aspects, trying to make sure that folks are prepared for the solitude, the loneliness, for the challenge. I've always said that the greater the challenge, the greater the potential reward. And that's something that plays out so often in the backcountry. But as far as, the podcast itself, it's about 4 years old. We've just published our 233rd episode. We drop every Thursday night at midnight. So folks have something to listen to on Friday going into their weekends. And would love to have y'all join us.
Man, we're always looking for good resources. We can tell stories about the old timers and the houndsmen, and I love bringing that up. We just did a great podcast on with a guy from northern New Mexico that was attacked by a black bear. Super story, but sometimes you just got to pump the brakes and find out what's going on in the world around you. And Backcountry Hunting Podcast is a great resource for people to do that. I really liked what you said about the mental preparedness, and it's a lot of people have the desire, or they think that they want to do certain things, and then they get into it and it's like, whoa, I didn't plan on this part. It's kind of like the Mike Tyson saying, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Absolutely. Yep. And it can be hard. Yeah.
And the old saying is, no plan survives first contact.
That's right.
You always go to the second plan B at that point. So, what are some of the things that you guys talk about? Because I haven't listened to that particular podcast. I've listened to the one on your bear hunting and shooting bears and some of those podcasts that are real applicable. But I'm a guy like you that likes to be mentally prepared, mental preparation.
The mental preparedness thing is first, just expect the unexpected, because if you're coming into a new area, even if you're a seasoned hunter in similar scenarios, there will be unexpected facets of that adventure. But particularly if you're coming west from, the deep South, the Midwest, the Northeast, whatever it might be, you're going to encounter some shocking changes. I try and correspond a lot with our listeners. You can reach me at joseph@backcountrypodcast.com. That's email, or just ping me on the Backcountry Hunting Podcast Instagram page. But we correspond a lot about some of these challenges that people face, the unexpected stuff. And I've heard everything from people that can't handle the silence. Suddenly there's a complete absence of road noise, of trains in the distance, of a tractor humming somewhere off in the background, whatever. But people don't anticipate that honest silence that you sometimes get in the backcountry. And then the solitude. I mean, it's big country. If you've grown up even hunting a full section of whatever, in Iowa, if you're blessed to hunt whitetails there or whatnot, a section is big until you get into an area in the mountains that's measured in hundreds of square miles. and
The
it's
Frank Church.
overwhelming. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the steepness makes it to where sometimes it can take you 2 hours to go a half a mile. And that makes the country feel even more vast. Well, it's one of those things. I think part of God's plan, the I don't want to say the undercover plan, but the non-obvious stuff is to sometimes help us feel our own significance, to help us stay humble and appreciative. And that big country will do that. And sometimes it does it to the point where it's overwhelming. And folks have a real hard time with it. So one of the big keys that we tell people is going with a good hunting partner, somebody you can trust, somebody you can talk to, somebody you're not afraid to say, hey, man, I'm actually struggling a little bit here. Help me out. Let's help me get back on focus. But better yet, hunt with somebody that knows you well enough and has known you long enough that they can see it without being told, and they'll lift you when you're down. And then you can give them that own, that perspective as well. If you see them struggling a bit, do something to lift their spirits. Another thing is very simple, sleep and nutrition. If you're not sleeping well, you're going to have mental, all mental struggles are compounded. And if you're not eating well, the same thing happens. Hydration, another huge one. If you're not hydrated, you can't think well. And it's not like you can jump in the side-by-side and run out to the convenience store and get yourself a drink there. You got to plan ahead. If it's real wet country, just have a good filter. I've taught my boys always carry a life straw in their pocket. And that way, even if you just cross a little brackish puddle, if you're real thirsty, you can safely drink out of it.
Yeah.
It's more important, of course, in desert country, if you're hunting high country desert or high country mule deer or desert mule deer. Some places you'll find elk without a lot of water. You got to plan ahead, and sometimes you have to haul water.
Mm-hmm.
That gets hard too, but stay hydrated.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Going back to a couple things you said there, the sleep deprivation is one of the main things that advanced interrogators use, to get information, because you start losing your mind. It's something that we use in training recruits in the military and different things like that as well. And for law enforcement, you deprive people of sleep and you really start figuring out what kind of person you're dealing with. It tests that mental toughness. And, for me, it's the first night out, the first couple nights out are always restless. They're always, it's hard to get that sleep. It's hard to get that rest. A lot of naps in the middle of the afternoon, when you're first getting out there and nothing's going on. So you just take a break, you kick the seat back. A lot of our hunting is vehicle based with the hounds, but it can be on muleback or on foot. And some of the places in Virginia that we hunt aren't the Frank Church Wilderness, but you're a few hours from the vehicle,
Sure.
and you've got to plan that. And it amazes me the number of people I see in the backcountry for even around here that walk in unprepared. They don't even think about the fact that if you get 2 miles back in this rough country and you do something as simple as sprain an ankle, cut yourself with a knife, skinning a bear, whatever you're doing, and you have even a minor emergency, becomes a major ordeal at that point when you're totally unprepared.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely can. And it, the deeper you are, the worse it becomes. And then if you add solo hunting into that, it's exacerbated as well.
Sure.
Anymore, I really encourage people doing that type of hunting to carry some sort of an emergency communication device, like a Garmin InReach or something. Yeah. The newest iPhones, I hear, have an SOS type feature that activates even when there's no cell phone service. It'll ping a satellite and you can get help. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's one of those things. When I was in my early 20s, I took a 10-day wilderness first responder course because I was guiding big game hunters at the time. And I just started feeling like my basic first aid course that was required to have my guide's license really wasn't adequate for some of the things I might encounter. And that wilderness first responder course has served me real well, not necessarily in responding to actual incidents. I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't yet had to try and save somebody's life, right? But I've been able to recognize oncoming situations before they became bad. I had one client that came out from Wisconsin and with his son, and we were just visiting the night before we headed into the high country with the pack horses, and he confessed to me that he had actually falsified his medical page. So we always sent out a medical form and had clients fill it out and send it back to us. And he left off that he was having a quadruple bypass that summer. So he's like, I don't know, 8 or 9 weeks off a quadruple bypass to his heart. And we're going to 9,500 feet elevation. He's coming from low country. And I knew right away this was potentially a real problem. So we adjusted our route. We went in. There's a road I could get real high, and we'd more or less be just traveling across the same altitude. We didn't have to climb to get in. It's a little longer, but it was safer, I felt. And by the time I got him halfway in there, his face was gray. He could only go 100 yards at a time before he'd have to lean against a tree and catch his breath for 5 minutes. And I knew we had a problem. And so I sat him down on an elk trail, told him to keep his eyes peeled, and I was coming back with a horse for him. So I took the pack horses in, dropped all their gear, and switched one of them to a riding saddle and went back and got him. And he didn't sleep for 2 nights and could barely walk from the client tent to the cook tent. We had a big wall tent camp. And I finally said, man, you're going downhill. I can tell you're just not feeling right. We need to get you back into the low country. And his son kept hunting, had a great hunt. We had to take him down. And I feel like if I hadn't had that training to watch, his responses to that high altitude and to kind of know just as simple as, getting him down 3,000 feet was going to make his life a whole lot better.
Sure.
Anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, we could do a whole podcast on the topic we're talking about for sure. I know that Heath is getting ready to drop a very similar episode here coming up, so I don't want to steal his thunder, Joseph, on this podcast at all. But some of the other things you guys talk about, I mean, like bullet selection, we've done a few episodes. There's so much common ground here, Joseph, that we need to find every time we can find common ground with our fellow hunters, whether they're turning a hound loose or they're hiking into the high country to spot and stalk, mountain goats. How do we do that? How do we continue? How do we capitalize on that? What's your recipe?
I don't know if I have a 100% fail-proof recipe for doing that, but I can tell you what's worked for me and some of the friends that I've hunted with. And that's just have an adventurous spirit and an open mind, because when you try something different, most likely you're going to find you like it. For example, a guy that grows up hunting high country mule deer and elk may have never hunted coons over hounds, and they may have some weird conceptions about it, misconceptions or just ideas. Go and try it, give it a chance with an open mind, and you will find that there are some lifestyles out there, some guys with other passions that are really compelling. So I grew up actually with a pack of hounds. We had 6 lion dogs, my brother and I did, through my late teens and into my 20s. And we loved to chase mountain lions. It's been a long time ago. I'm not going to admit how long, but it was just a great introduction into that world. And working a good dog, watching a good hound or a good bird dog work is a terrific, way to expand the way you enjoy the outdoors. So I guess that's probably the biggest thing that's worked for me, is just challenging with a smile, challenge people to try it. Say, listen, don't knock it until you've tried it. And then if you decide it's not for you, you'll have some authority behind you to talk about it. I've never seen a person like that come back and say, yep, I was right, it sucked.
Yeah.
Those guys are unethical or whatever. They come back and they're like, man, that was cool. So
we've had the opportunity to take veterans on adventures and stuff through Freedom Hunters and guys that have never I mean, they came in with a lot of predisposed ideas about what with hunting with hounds was all about. They had no experience, and by the end of the weekend, it's like, are you guys going to do another one of these? We want to go again. You know, whether it's hog
Yeah.
hunting, bear hunting, you know what? We had people drive from Iowa to north central Indiana to go coon hunting with hounds. And even in my mind, I'm like, who in the right mind would do that? Hey, folks, when you've got great sponsors and great products, it's not hard to talk about them. And I want to tell you about onX. OnXmaps.com is where you go to get the most comprehensive mapping system in the hunting world. I'm telling you, it is a game changer for your hunting. It's going to reduce the cost of having map cards for every state. It doesn't directly integrate with your Garmin, but I use it all the time. If you can read a Garmin and then open up onX, you can see exactly where your dogs are headed, get property information, get terrain features. You can track where you've been. So if you're hunting in a new area, say you're headed to Autumn Oaks and you're going to guide up there through a friend of a friend of a friend, and you want to know the area, you can actually pre-scout that area, go in and hunt it, and it'll map your actual track. You can turn on that feature and it'll record it. While you're out there hunting, pre-hunting those spots, you can also find out who the neighboring landowners are. Contact them, tell them what's up, tell them you're going to be in there hunting, and more than likely you're going to be able to gain access to more property in those areas. I use onX all the time, no lie. So you can go to the Houndsman XP website at houndsmanxp.com, click on the onX logo on our sponsor page, and get your next elite subscription and use our promo code HXP20, and you will get 20% off of your subscription for onX. Patreon members, you get a deeper discount when you join us on Patreon. Know where you stand with onX. With no experience, you know.
Sure.
This last year, we had guys that came down from Wisconsin. The two veterans brought their kids with them, came down to coon hunt in northern Indiana and I'm in southern Indiana, and I was even asking myself why I'm driving 5 hours to coon hunt tonight when I can coon hunt right here. But you're exactly right. But I think it's human nature, though, to find a tribe and be accepted into your tribe. And along with that, if you're not guarded, then you become so tribalistic that everything anybody else is doing is not living up to what you do, or is not as good as what you do, or it's not the right way, or it's, you know, you just get it. We fall into those traps.
It can happen. Yeah. And another thing that I see that is maybe, I don't know, it's not a hopeful trend, is I see less and less reading of actual printed material, books and magazines among, you know, the younger crowds today. Now they're reading online and so forth, and that's good. That's important. But, you know, I grew up reading Robert Rourke and Hemingway and Capstick on hunting Africa. And so I always had this driving desire to go hunt Africa. And that's been one of the most rewarding experiences in my life. I've been 8 times, and I can't wait to go back again. And it's oddly enough becoming less and less expensive comparatively. You know, a good elk hunt in the West now costs more than a good safari in Namibia. It's crazy. But it's a really cool experience to go do that. And it really opens your eyes and helps you learn what drives other people's passions. And more often than not, you end up adopting those.
For sure. It's, I still see the comments on social media, though, especially, you know, somehow it seems like Instagram has become the new place that I see these, maybe because my Facebook is the algorithms. I only see what they're, you know, what I'm interested in, but somebody will post something on Instagram and another hunter will come on and say, well, you know, hunting hounds with bears is not fair chase, or hunting a mountain lion with hounds is not fair chase. And I don't understand that, because the next question is always, have you ever done it? It's like, no, but, how can
Right.
this be fair?
Yeah. I hunted a bear this past spring here in my home state of Idaho, and shot it over dogs. I've hunted black bears, spot and stalk, quite a few of them, over bait, quite a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
I've never shot one over hounds before. I've predator called them. I've
Yeah.
used a lot of different methods, and so I was really excited to get to hunt one over hounds. And I posted a couple pictures on social media, and I had a guy on Facebook say, how can this be ethical?
Right.
You left the meat, which we didn't, of course, and just anyway, some derogatory stuff, kind of like you're talking about. And I don't have a whole lot of patience for internet trolls. I just kind of, I think I responded something like, don't knock it till you've tried it, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But another guy that I'm acquainted with on Facebook kind of jumped into my defense, and he did something that I think is really admirable. He said, "Hey, I think, just guessing, you've probably never tried this. Come out, hunt bears with me. We'll spot and stalk them." He also lives in Idaho. "And we'll take all the meat, we'll cook it. You'll learn how good it is. You'll learn how, so many bear hunters take everything, the skull, the claws, the hide, the meat, boil down the fat, render down the fat for bear oil." And he said, most of these guys, these backcountry hunters, are not wasting anything. Come out and try it with me, and then see what if that doesn't change your mind. And of course, the guy didn't respond.
Sure.
Right. But
Sure.
I thought, wow, I can't do that. Right. There's too many people that and it's just too, I couldn't. But I was really impressed that this gentleman went out of his way far enough to invite somebody with an alternate opinion, say, come, let me try and change your mind. That was pretty cool.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm seeing more. Actually, I'm seeing a little bit more of that kind of mentality come in. I don't know how we got sidetracked on social media. I think it's because it goes right back to what you were talking about, the solitude. A lot of times people can't get away from their phones long enough, and that drives them crazy. It's such a huge part of their life. And but I'm seeing a lot more on social media where people are being more open-minded about things than what I have in the past. Back in the day, man, it just, the people were so entrenched in their thinking and tribalism that if you shot an inline muzzleloader and I shot a flintlock, then you weren't even a real hunter,
Right.
So crazy stuff. Crazy.
Yeah.
We've come a long way, I think.
I agree. And I think, even though there's still a lot of that tribalism, I do think that the tribes are now starting to think maybe we need to be in on a bit of a, an overall alliance here, just to protect our hunting future and save that for our kids. Yeah.
All right. So this is a question I got for you personally. As many podcasts as you've done on ballistics and firearms and bullets, and tell us what your bear hunting setup was that you took that bear with this spring with hounds.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I follow the old Robert Rourke philosophy of use enough gun, right? I like to hammer stuff hard, and I've never been recoil sensitive. That's just a personal characteristic, So I took one of the new Marlin lever actions built under the Ruger umbrella. There's some beautiful lever actions, chambered in 45-70. And I was shooting.
Thumper.
Yeah, that's right. Shooting Barnes not Vortex, their new Pioneer line of ammo, loaded with a triple shock bullet, 300 grain, all copper bullet with a big hollow nose. They open up the size of a silver dollar and go real deep. I've seen them go, 36 inches or more deep in calibrated ordnance gelatin in penetration tests. So I like to hit stuff hard. I've seen a lot of game over the years, that just didn't get killed as quickly as I thought I'd like to see it die. And of course, every animal's individual, and just like people, some of them refuse to give up the ghost a lot more than others. Some of them just drop at the shot, right? But you can kind of swing the odds in your favor by swinging a hammer that's appropriate for the job. And I'm a big believer in that. I don't like shooting stuff where you place all of your faith in shot placement, right? You can shoot a moose through both lungs with a 223 and it'll kill him. But if you hit around the edge of the vitals, you probably aren't going to recover him. You got to, in my opinion, it's good to shoot something that's going to really cause damage to the vital organs that's on a par with the size of the animal, just out of respect for it. Sure. So I'm not saying going overboard. You don't need to shoot prairie dogs with a 50 BMG, But anyway, so that's what I shot this bear with. My hunting partner was carrying another good rig, also a Marlin, and his was loaded with 225 grain all copper bullets, also Barnes ammunition in 44 Magnum. And that's a pretty good load, right? A lot of people carry 44 Magnums in bear country as kind of a backup personal defense tool, right? Well, his bear was about the size of mine, maybe a few pounds heavier, and we shot him in similar situations. And he shot his 3 times. It died cleanly, but it took maybe 30 seconds. It actually ended up getting out of the tree and ran a short distance and then tipped over. Within view, no problems, no dogs hurt, and so forth. The bear I shot, I hit him broadside, sort of. He was way above me, so it was probably entered low and then exited up on his high shoulder, and it just about knocked him out of the tree. And he whipped around, grabbed on with both paws, and I shot him between both shoulder blades, and he fell out rag, limp, stone dead. So he died in a couple of seconds, right? Just because I think the extra wallop of that 45-70 made a difference. And
what's that bullet weigh?
That one's 300 grains out of the 45-70.
And what's the 44 Magnum was probably what, 180 to
225.
Okay.
It was 225. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another great load. Yeah. Yeah. But it just didn't have that same freight train effect on them.
Sure. Were you shooting any optic or anything on your?
Yeah, my partner didn't. He shot iron sights. I shot a Leupold VXR. I think it's actually a discontinued scope, but it's a red dot in a magnified optic. So it's a 1:5.
Okay, low magnification.
Yeah, great scope for shooting dark animals in dark thickets at low light.
Right. Yeah, where you need that field of vision, field of view. They don't get lost in the scope. I have seen people that weren't accustomed to hunting the way we hunt, show up with 30-06s and long range scopes, and you look at their scope and they've got it dialed up to 20, and it's like, no, that's not what you want. You don't want to. You've got to be able to find things in that scope real. It's not a good rapid site acquisition, target acquisition type scope.
That's right.
So.
Yep. Anytime you're hunting over hounds or thick cover or for dangerous game, you got to have a big wide field of view.
Yep, for sure. And low magnification.
Yep.
Yep. So what else you got going on with your other work besides the podcast? I know you do some writing, you do some stuff like that. So
yeah. So the writing is actually my full-time job. I've been doing that for coming up on, what is it? 16.
Yeah, I said, what else you got going on? Like that's not the biggest part.
Yeah, I write for Shooting Times magazine, Peterson's Hunting magazine, Rifle Shooter magazine, and for Guns and Ammo's special interest publications. Those are the newsstand only, like focused topic, big perfect bound, beautiful magazines that you find on the newsstands at the grocery stores or whatever. And I generally produce about 100 articles a year.
Wow.
And do a lot of new rifle reviews, ammunition reviews and analysis, optics, performance stuff, adventure stories for the hunting magazines. Write a vintage gun column for Shooting Times. That's one of my great passions in life, is fine old firearms.
No kidding.
Do hand loadings. I do the hand loading column for Rifle Shooter magazine, and then the Western hunting column for Peterson's Hunting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got to go through the museum there at Cody this year when we were out there for the American Bear Foundation convention.
Oh, that's a terrific place.
You can't do it in one day.
No.
I mean, I can, because I'm not if I was truly into the vintage stuff like you were, but I was going over and like pulling out the Savage 1896 rifles and looking at those, the old humpback lever guns and things like that. So, but I didn't even scratch the surface in there. And we were there. We went back 2 days and took in all the museums. I was intrigued with the art museum too,
Sure.
that they've got right there. So, but
I I love that museum as well, the art museum. My wife is a contemporary wildlife artist and
okay,
does very well with it. She's represented in Jackson Hole and Santa Fe and Seattle and Park City, Utah. Yeah, she's pretty talented. If you have any listeners that are into very cool wildlife art, check her out. It's Jenna von Benedikt
Jenna
is her
von
website.
Benedikt. I
Yeah.
am writing that down because I do like adding to that collection. I think there's something to um, capturing that kind of awesome stuff. You know,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah. My daughter spent a lot of her time painting. She did a cover for with a black bear, a treed black bear in a tree, and I'll send you some pictures over
Oh,
of
nice.
some of her artwork. And
I'd love to see him.
yeah, yeah. Of course, everybody's like, "Oh, my daughter's a great artist," and then you get some paint by number thing, but uh, it looks like it was drawn with crayons. You know, who doesn't love their kids' artwork? But
For
anyway,
sure.
yeah. Um, so what's going on in the outdoor industry? I mean, what are you seeing that's trending right now? Threats. What's
Mm.
what's going on there?
You know, the threats is a little bit harder for me. I'm an optimist by nature.
Well, let's talk about the good stuff.
Yeah,
We spend enough time talking about threats on this podcast. Let's talk about the
sure.
optimistic future for hunting.
So I see some good things. There's a lot of passion in the outdoor world, just following the whole COVID mess. You know, people got outside and started hunting more than they have in a long time. The backcountry thing I think is real trendy. People want to get out, find that solitude, and kind of reset their mental can't talk today, equilibrium.
I can't
Long
talk any day.
range long range shooting is real trendy, and I'm fully on board with that. Long range hunting is also super trendy, and I'm ambivalent on that. Well, I'm not ambivalent. That would indicate I don't have an opinion. I do have an opinion, and I'm okay with it. I'm fine with the guys that live and breathe that lifestyle. If you're burning out barrels, perfecting your craft, that's one thing. And we're all wired differently. Some of us love to hunt close and shoot traditional bows. You know, I shot my first branch antlered bull elk at 11 yards with a longbow.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, some of us are wired technically and just love to shoot and place a perfect shot at further distances. That's okay. Just don't buy super expensive equipment and think that it's gonna. You can't purchase skill, is what I'm saying. And I'll get off
Right.
that soapbox.
Well, I'll comment on that too. I mean,
All right.
that's the same as the person that thinks they can just go buy some hounds and go out and start catching game effectively.
Yeah.
You know, there's a few things there. I'm with you as far as that goes. If you think, you know, I was watching a TV show and now I'm gonna go kill an antelope at 1,000 yards, and but the guys like you were talking about that burn out barrels to perfect their craft, they're putting in the time, they're putting in the trigger time, they're
Yeah.
putting in the work, and it's all good. I have no problem with that. It's the guys that are half-assing it that go out
Yeah.
there and they're taking shots that are way beyond their ability because they think they've spent $10,000 on a rifle setup, and like you said, they didn't buy the skill that goes with the rifle.
Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
So
And the
for
same
sure.
thing, I see the same thing with people buying a bird dog or buying a hound and just not
Yeah.
spending the time with them that they need to get them fundamentally started. And then they go out and they're frustrated because the dog isn't, you know, acting like the dog that they hunted over on some preserve somewhere,
Right.
you know, that's
Right.
an old veteran dog. Yeah.
Well, I've even seen guys go out and buy a really nice hound
Mm-hmm.
and then not hunt it,
Yeah.
and then they can't figure out, you know, why they're not being successful with a hound that somebody else had a lot of success with. And it's
Like taking
because
taking a high school track star and putting them on donuts and no exercise for a year, and then putting them back on the track and wondering why they can't run.
Exactly. Yeah. And people are constantly asking me how many hounds I have, how many dogs I have, because typically, houndsmen are known to get a few too many mouths to feed at times and have too many head of dogs. If you're a hard hunter and you can keep them in the woods and you keep them exercised, if you can do that with 15 or 40, then more power to you. But for me personally, with my schedule and my other obligations and things, I'm just kind of a 4 or 5 dog guy, that just dogs that get their exercise. Of course, if I have a bad wreck or something like that on a mean bear, I'm going to be out of business for a few days. But I really like what an old houndsman said one time. His name was Willis Butaw. He said, if you can't catch a bear with 4 hounds, you don't need more dogs. You need better dogs. So
yeah. I like that.
That's a rule I try to live by. So
there's back to the trends thing. Another trend I've seen is expensive equipment. People
are, oh my gosh, isn't it crazy?
Whether, I see it in the houndsman world, just looking from the outside in, I grew up, guys were buying and driving old trucks with their dogs. Now you see some of these guys with cutting edge, the Toyota Tacoma with dog boxes that cost more than my farm truck, just the dog box and the GPS collars and so forth. The same thing is in the hunting industry. Even guys in the East that can't find a range further than 100 yards are still buying precision rifles because they like the knowledge that they can shoot a 1/2-inch group at 100 yards with it, and expensive scopes. You see guys buy a hunting rifle setup now. So rifle, scope mounts, scope, bipod, all the gizmos or whatever. And like you mentioned, some of them will spend up to $10,000, and it's not uncommon to see a guy drop 3,000. When I was a kid, if you spent over $1,000 for your rifle and your scope, you were living large.
Man, you had it set up.
Of course, that's been a few years ago, and prices have increased too. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. But just, everything from, and I'm a gear guy. I do believe that the right gear, starting at the ground with your boots all the way up, can make or break your hunt. And I grew up, the first real hunting camo that I had was actually military surplus from Vietnam era. The pants were too short. I've actually cut off a pair of blue jeans that I had and sewed a cuff around the bottom of them to make them long enough to wear. I think mom actually sewed those in for me, but I had the idea. And just whatever boots you could put on your feet and stuff. So I know what it's like to scrape and get whatever you can to get out there. And I think that's a valuable lesson for people. I think everybody should go through that. I made a lot of my own gear. I made, when we were trapping, taking traps apart and putting a trap together that actually worked. You take 6 traps and you get enough parts off of all of them to make one of them work. Everything from hunting belts to carry lights on. I did all that stuff. I understand that, but now it's easy to fall into, I see the value of spending some money. Buy once, cry once. Good base layers, good boots, good socks, and it keeps you in the field longer. I'm at the age where my physical abilities are starting to drop off. So I got to make up some ground somewhere. So I do it with the gear to keep, at least I'm comfortable while I'm suffering.
I'm exactly the same way. I'm bona fide middle-aged now, and I grew up on, hunting Army surplus stuff, either like you talk post-Vietnam War era stuff or wool, if I could find it. I really liked my wool pants,
You bet.
But now, man, I've got a little bit more jingle in my pocket, and if it's going to keep me more comfortable in the backcountry, I got aches and pains. I don't sleep as well at night. It takes me longer to recover after pushing hard up a mountain, So I like a lightweight hunting rifle that's really accurate, and those are cheaper than heavy rifles that aren't very accurate, or they're not as cheap. Excuse me. They're way more expensive. But
but
if it makes or breaks the opportunity, I've told people, a heavy hunting rifle, precision hunting rifle is easier to shoot than a light one, but you may not even get that shot opportunity because you can't get up the mountain fast enough with the 12-pound rifle. Right. And that window may close before you get to your vantage point, So carry a 7-pound rifle and learn to shoot it.
Have you ever worn the old Woolrich Malone pants? The gray ones with the red and green stripes in them? They're big in the West. They always were big. They used to be big in the West. And
so my dad, funny enough, got me, I don't know where he got it, but he got a bunch of German wool. And it was pretty good stuff until it got so old that it rotted and fell apart. But I wore that for 10 or 15 years for pants. And then, I can't remember what I used for a while, but anymore, I've got a real nice set of sleeping Indian wool that I use a lot. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, I've got a set of King of the Mountain that I sprung for probably, man, I bet it's been 20 years ago now. And
it lasts.
It's still brand new. It's heavy. It does get heavy, but I'm with you. I had a set of those same pants. They were like cargo pants and kind of a brown, mottled brown color that were excellent outdoor pants, warm and stuff like that. But I think we just get to the point where you just need a few creature comforts for me to get me over the top. It's it's definitely nice. Definitely
We've
nice.
earned them.
Yeah, I guess.
3 or 4 decades in the mountains, you start appreciating those creature comforts.
Yeah. So when you were I'm going to go back to your early days of lion hunting.
Sure.
And you say you were hunting with your brother and
yeah.
What parts where were you guys at? Where were you hunting?
So we were southern Utah, and the area we primarily hunted was actually a roadless area. So you couldn't take even, snowmobile, 4-wheeler, nothing in there. So we'd take horses in, and we didn't have any we were too poor to have, radio telemetry collars or whatnot back then. So we mostly hunted with a little bit of snow up to plenty of snow, right? We didn't run dry ground much, partly because the season didn't really open until we were getting snow generally. But we had some long chases, and if you lost your dogs, you had to track them with your eyeballs until you found them again, which is another reason snow could be important.
Right.
It'd get out so far ahead of you couldn't hear them anymore sometimes. And on the other end of the stick, we had some pretty good mountain horses, and I've snowy rivered off the side of more than one canyon, just hot-blooded and keeping up with the dogs.
Right.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Did you guys hunt a lot of that rock country? Were you like southern Utah, southwest, southeast, south central?
Some of it, south central. Yep.
Yeah.
We hunted up in some big plateau country with a lot of quaking aspens, big rolling canyons filled with pine trees and so forth. And then later in the year, January and February, we'd end up hunting down in some of that slick rock, Red Rock Canyon country. And that was cool country, but it was also scary too. I think it was probably about the 4th serious date with my wife. She'd come down to check out the family place, and I'd put her up in a little overnight bed and breakfast or something. And she went out and the next morning with me, actually to check a frozen water gate. We weren't getting livestock their water, and on the way we found a fresh lion track. So we busted the ice out real quick and headed back and got the dogs, and they went right up through town. They took the cat right through the middle of town in the middle of daytime, right? I don't think anybody saw it. They saw the dogs, they'd hear the dogs come out. And of course, town was just a big sprawling farming community. At one point, that cat went up the end of a slick rock mesa, right up the end, and we watched our dogs follow it up. And there was a good skiff of snow, 2-3 inches. And at the top, one of those dogs lost his footing and came all the way down that big slick rock nose, just sliding on his side, bumping, falling all the way down. I thought, oh my gosh, this future love interest, because I was pretty sure I wanted to marry this girl at this point already. I said, she just seen us kill a dog. Anyway, seconds later, that dog ran right up the mountain again. He'd probably got the wind knocked out of him, but he was fine. And about 3 miles later, they treed that cat backed out on a little stubby juniper hanging over a slick rock canyon. And the dogs were all, trying to get up that short little gnarled trunk at him. And funny, he was a right-handed cat. He always swung with his right paw, and all the dogs had the left side of their face and ears was bloody from that. There's blood all over the snow. He'd gone up in altitude, and there's about 1.5 feet of snow there. And we had to hike into that country because we had some cliffs we couldn't take the horses up. And so we waded in there and pulled the dogs out by their tails, so we didn't get slapped in the face by the lion.
Right.
We weren't going to kill this one. It wasn't I think it was a big female, if I remember right, but tied him off, and my wife let a bleeding dog out for 1.5 miles through knee-deep snow. My wife now, she was just a girlfriend at the time, and I thought, yep, she's a keeper. So
no doubt.
Cool. Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah, you get those cats, those lions ledged out like that, and I'm not gonna lie, that makes me nervous. We were hunting the Navajo, and there were some ledges and different things that we were looking at, and we just got to talking about it. We're like, what if we ledge one out over the face of that thing right there, and just talking about the effort that it would take to get to them and stuff. Guys that do that on a regular basis, man, you got my respect, because that's some tough country out there.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It's almost like, what do you do? I don't know. You just got to go in there and get them, I guess.
Yeah. We never had it happen, but I knew other hunters that would have dogs try and follow a cat down off of a series of cliffs and get ledged out where they couldn't get up or down. And they had to go in like the next day, rappel in and lift those dogs out. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times I even know guys that'll hire, climbers and stuff to go in and do the rescue for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the guy that's going to rig up the dogs are treed tie out and go down over the cliff. I'm not that guy anymore. I used to be, but I'm not that guy anymore. I was reading a story the other day. One of our sponsors, Dogs Are Treed, builds a tie out that's just outstanding, and he was talking about using it to rappel down the face to get his dogs. Ooh. And I was like, I love you, Kevin and Nancy, but I don't trust you that much.
So, yeah, it's one of those things. Sometimes they get into funny spots.
Yeah.
Our inspiration, my brother and I, when we got started, was an old lion hunter named Stan Meekum, and he's still alive, still hunts some. His boys. Yep. His boys, Clint, McLean, Meekum.
Hunter.
Serious. Yeah. 20 years ago, they were kind of like houndsman royalty in southern Utah. But
right.
Dan, once we were talking to him, and he said, I had kind of a gnarly experience the other day. He said the dogs pushed a cat into a little cave, and it was just like a tunnel, went back about 12 or 15 feet, and it was maybe 2 feet around, and all the dogs went in there, and I wanted my dogs back. So I said, how'd you get them back? He said, well, I crawled in there pushing a flashlight in one hand and a pistol in the other hand. I'd grab them by the tail and back out. Yeah.
One at a time. The bad ones are like when you get a bear in something and the dog manages to get around. You've got one dog behind the bear, so you got 3 dogs in front of you and there's one hound behind the bear, and the 3 are keeping them busy and the bear doesn't know which way to go. So at some point you got to figure out how you're going to get everything out of there. So that's why I train for a lot better recall these days. Used to, I didn't put a handle on anything. But now I like having a handle where I can just say, come on, boys, we're done. And they just peel off and say, okay, we'll get the next one.
Yep. Let's go find another adventure. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I like that.
For sure. Well, I think we found a lot of common ground here, Joseph. Just because even those backcountry places where you go, if my hounds go, I'm going there whether I'd planned on going or not.
That's right.
And so I would encourage everybody to, I mean, even if I know that not every person that listens to the Backcountry Hunting Podcast is going to be thrilled with every episode I put out. There's no doubt
Sure.
about it. If it's not your interest, but there's some stuff that we do that we can cross over, but at least go in there and take a look, folks, and see what Joseph is producing over there. It's high quality. It's one of the top rated podcasts out there. You're always top 30, usually top 20 and above in Chartable.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So you got a great voice for radio too.
Well,
at least I didn't say you got a face for radio.
That's what I usually hear. That is probably true.
Yeah, I'm not sure what we're doing moving over to YouTube, because I definitely have the face for radio.
That's funny.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, what else you got for us before we wrap this up, Joseph?
I think I like the way you kind of have just such a way of saying we're in this together. So I really appreciate that about your show. I appreciate you being willing, to host me here on your show. That's been an honor to be here. For folks that are interested in dogs, man, they bring so much extra greatness to your life. Hounds, bird dogs, I love bird dogs because I live in some country with not a lot, but some good wild bird hunting.
Right.
Just had a thought pass my mind. Throw out a little shout to the bird trainer that has trained my dog. I couldn't afford him because he's so good, but he trades me a rifle or a scope or something to help me tune my dogs up, and it's been a blessing. Tice Erickson, Utah Bird Dog Training, and he recently launched the Bird Dog Podcast. Ton of knowledge there. Check it out, folks. He's got great episodes on everything from choosing a puppy to, pressure on a dog and how it affects him, how to use it wisely and effectively, and just a terrific all-around friend and human being. So check out the Bird Dog Podcast too.
Yeah, we sure will. And we might even track him down to be a guest, because just because it's not barking up a tree, dog behavior is dog behavior. Dogs learn the same way. It's just finding those things that they're predisposed in their genetic makeup to find out where to put pressure and where to release pressure and stuff like that. But things like that topic right there, pressure, most people look at that and they don't understand what that means to a dog trainer. And Heath Hyatt does a great job. I keep talking about Heath, but he does a great job on that. And then Chad Reynolds also on our Friday show is a multi-species animal trainer, but specializes in all kinds of dog training stuff. And so he understands that too. So if you can start putting all these pieces together, I look at it like, it's all a recipe. You go out here and you're kind of experimenting, making your own barbecue sauce, and you don't just start from your own mind. Usually you're usually picking up these different pieces and bringing them all together to put together the perfect blend that you need.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Joseph, man, I appreciate you taking time to join us on the Houndsman XP podcast. Everybody, we'll have the link to Joseph's podcast in our show notes. And you guys got a website? How can people reach you, Joseph?
Yeah, we're actually in process of revamping the website. Funny enough, it's always been backcountryhuntingpodcast.net, because when I launched years ago, somebody else owned the .com domain, and I just managed to buy that. So we're about to go through website redesign. So currently the best way to reach us is, of course, you can just follow the Backcountry Hunting Podcast on whatever listening app you use, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, Stitcher, whatever, or check us out on Instagram if you're a social media user. That's just backcountryhuntingpodcast.com, or email me at joseph@backcountrypodcast, no hunting, just backcountrypodcast.com. Love to hear from you.
.com or what? Backcountry Hunting Podcast.
Sorry. Yeah, Joseph@backcountryhuntingpodcast. Dang it. I'm confusing myself now. The email address is joseph@backcountrypodcast.com.
Okay.
The web address is .net. Yeah.
Gotcha. I just wanted to clarify it. make sure there wasn't a Gmail or something there, because I'll do that. I will do that all the time. It's like, oh yeah, just drop me an email at houndsmanxp.com. And
yeah.
Come on. What are you thinking? But anyway, you can check us. Joseph, I appreciate it. It's been a great show. If we can ever reciprocate, and we'll stay in touch, try to get some stuff.
For sure. It's been sorry to talk over you there.
No, that's all right. Unity is the key, man. Unity is the key.
I agree. It's been a privilege and an honor to join you here. And you bet, I'd love to get you on the Backcountry Hunting Podcast to talk about dogs and bear hunting, lion hunting someday. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to do it. Folks, you can check out this podcast and all of our other podcasts by going to houndsmanxp.com. You can, we've got all the links to all the shows there, a lot more shows just like this one, talking to great people that are passionate about hunting, that carry a good message. And join us on Patreon. You can support us on Patreon. You can go to Houndsman XP. Make sure you're shopping our sponsors, checking out our merch, all that good stuff that I have to say at the end of every podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Houndsman XP podcast. This is Fair Chase.